The call to the police was already made. In his mind, Mark was sure. He was dealing with a criminal, someone who had snuck into the empty house next door to steal or squat. He stood at his window, watching the shadowy figure move through the dark rooms, his heart hardened by suspicion. He never imagined that in just a few moments, his entire world would be turned upside down by a single, heartbreaking discovery. Mark was a man of routine. He liked his quiet street, his neatly trimmed lawn, and the predictable rhythm of his life. He'd lived in his home for 15 years, and he took pride in being a good neighbor, which to him meant keeping a watchful eye on the community. When the Johnsons moved out of the house next door a month ago, he made it a point to notice any unusual activity. It was a chilly Tuesday evening when he saw it, a flicker of light from inside the Johnsons' living room. The house was supposed to be vacant. His first thought was one of annoyance, then concern. He peered through the gathering dusk, his brow furrowed. He saw a woman moving around, her silhouette faint against the window. She seemed to be cleaning. Probably scoping the place out, he muttered to himself, his jaw tightening. Seeing what's left to take. The decision felt clear, a duty to protect the neighborhood. He picked up his phone, dialed the non-emergency line, and reported a possible break-in. "There's a woman in the house on Elm," he said, his voice low. "She doesn't belong here." After the call, he stayed at his post, waiting for the police to arrive. He watched as the woman moved from room to room. She wasn't rushing or stuffing things into a bag. She was moving slowly, almost reverently. Once she stopped and simply stood in the middle of the living room, her head bowed. Mark felt a flicker of doubt, but he brushed it aside. "It's an act," he told himself. "She's trying to look innocent." He saw her bend down and pick up a small, framed photo from the mantelpiece. She held it gently, wiping the glass with her sleeve. "That's it," Mark thought. "She's stealing a keepsake." His conviction returned, stronger than ever. He was doing the right thing. Soon, the quiet of the evening was broken by the slow approach of a police cruiser, its lights off. Two officers stepped out and met Mark on his driveway. He pointed toward the house. "She's still in there, in the living room." The officers nodded and walked toward the front door. Mark followed at a distance, his heart pounding. This was it. The moment the intruder would be caught. Twist/realization, the front door was unlocked. One officer pushed it open gently. "Hello, police. Is anyone in here?" The woman emerged from the living room, her hands held up not in surrender, but in a gesture of peaceful explanation. She wasn't fearful or aggressive. She just looked tired and profoundly sad. "It's okay, officers," she said, her voice soft but steady. "My name is Alina. This was my mother's house." Mark, standing just outside the door, scoffed quietly. "A likely story," he whispered. But then one of the officers, a seasoned man with kind eyes, spoke. "Ma'am, the current owners, the Johnsons, reported no family would be accessing the home." The woman, Alina, nodded slowly. "I know. They were very kind to let me come here one last time. My mother passed away in this house just before it was sold." Her voice cracked slightly. "I live across the country. I couldn't get back until today. I needed to say goodbye." She turned and picked up the small photo she had been holding earlier. She showed it to the officers. It was a picture of a much younger Alina with her arm around a beaming woman, the same woman Mark used to see tending her roses in the front yard. "This was her favorite room," Alina said, her eyes glistening. "I was just remembering." The officers' posture softened. They understood. But Mark, still watching from the doorway, felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He was starting to see how wrong he had been. Then the other officer, who had been quietly looking around, gestured to a small, worn suitcase tucked neatly by the stairs. "Ma'am, is that your bag?" Elena looked down, a flush of embarrassment on her cheeks. "Yes, officer. My flight doesn't leave until the morning. I couldn't afford a hotel for just one night. I thought it would be okay to just stay here in her house for a few hours. I wasn't going to take anything. I just didn't have anywhere else to go." She was hiding. But she wasn't hiding from the law. She was hiding her poverty. She was hiding her grief. She was hiding the simple, heartbreaking fact that a daughter saying goodbye to her mother had no place to sleep for the night. In that moment, the walls of judgment Mark had built so high came crashing down. The truth was not what he had assumed. It was far more human and far more painful. The officers exchanged a look. The older one said, "Ma'am, we're very sorry for your loss, but you can't stay here. It's not your property anymore." Elena just nodded, wiping a tear from her eye. I understand. I'll go, but as she turned to pick up her solitary suitcase, Mark finally found his voice. Wait! Everyone turned to look at him. He stepped into the doorway, his face filled with a shame he had never known. I'm the one who called, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I made a terrible mistake. I judged you without knowing anything about you. Elena offered him a small, forgiving smile. It's okay. You were just looking out for the neighborhood. But Mark couldn't let it be okay. He looked at the officers. It's my fault she's in this situation. Please let me make it right. He turned to Elena. You don't have to go to the airport. You can stay at my home. My wife is away visiting her sister and we have a guest room. It's warm and it's safe. Please. Elena was taken aback. I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition, Mark said, and for the first time his voice was warm. It's an apology, and it's what my mother would have wanted me to do. The officers, seeing the situation resolve itself with such unexpected grace, simply nodded and returned to their car. That night, Mark didn't just give Elena a room. He made her tea. He listened as she shared stories about her mother, her love for gardening, her terrible singing in the kitchen, her fierce love for her family. Mark shared stories, too, of how her mother had brought him soup when he was sick one winter. They weren't stranger and intruder anymore. They were two people connected by a memory of a good woman. The next morning, Mark drove Elena to the airport. As she got out of the car, she turned to him. Thank you, she said. Not just for the room, but for seeing me, really seeing me. Mark nodded, his eyes also full. Thank you, he replied, for teaching me to look closer. He watched her walk into the terminal, a woman who had been hiding her pain, until a moment of misguided judgment became a moment of divine grace. We are so quick to judge, to build stories in our minds based on fear and assumption. But sometimes the truth is not a crime. It's a quiet, hidden heartache, waiting only for a little kindness to bring it into the light. Share this story if it reminded you to always look closer. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for more stories that will touch your heart.